Hello, my name is Tanya McIntosh. I am a piano teacher at Vincent Music, and today we'll be looking at scale work and finger technique. Now, why is scale work and finger technique important? Why is it an important facet of music, especially with piano? With scale work, or specifically just scales, if we look at our pieces, we notice that there's always a key signature at the beginning of a piece. And it's very important to understand what the key signature entails and how you would need to perform it. And it's very important to know key signatures because it's what sets the sound, the tone of that song, that music that the player performs. And key signatures, if you have looked and noticed before, key signatures encompass scales. So for example, if you have a look at the piece at the beginning of the piece, and you notice that there's no sharps and flats, then you would know from your scale work that it is the key of C major, because the key of C major, when you play, contains no sharps, no flats. And that's why we start learning scales, so then we can have a better idea and understanding how to read key signatures and implement them in performances correctly. Now, why is finger technique important? Why do we learn finger technique? Specifically with scales, for a start. The reason why, in my personal opinion, finger technique is important because it strengthens the finger movement and the dexterity. Now, as a beginner player, when you start off, you might feel uncomfortable playing the keys because you're not used to using all your fingers in that certain way, pushing down the keys or moving the keys along or making leaps on the piano. So it might feel a little uncomfortable. You're not used to it yet because, like I said before, you haven't exercised those fingers yet. And that's when finger technique meshed with scales comes along. When you practice scales and taking deep understanding and practice hard on your finger technique, what fingers you need to use, whether it be moving up and down the piano or skipping on the piano or doing semitones up and down the piano, you are practicing moving your fingers and pushing down the keys. And as over time, the more you do it, the stronger your fingers are, and the easier it is to move them around the piano and do all these different movements without any difficulties. So, what are the various kinds of scales you come across? Well, there's a few scales, but the one I want to focus upon is similar motion, country motion, chromatic, and arpeggios. These are the more common scales you would come across. Let's start with similar motion though. And similar motion, there's a lot to unpack with similar motion scales. But let's just start with focusing on one scale, that is C major scale, similar motion. So, let me perform your C major scale. It would sound like this. I'm playing it in 2 octaves, okay? 1, 2, ending it here, and back down to middle C. That is what a C major scale 2 octave similar motion would sound like. Now, when you're playing a similar motion scale, one thing you want to take note of is when you play it, you want to make sure they are smooth and connected. You can play them detached, okay? But most of the time, you would want to play them smooth and connected just because it sounds a little bit nicer. If you take part in ABB or ABRSM examinations or any other kind of exam, they might ask you to play in staccatos. And in smooth and connected, in a slur. Smooth and connected. Very sorry. Just like this. Smooth and connected. Okay, but let's just start with playing it smooth and connected first. Have one note down, and as that note comes in the second, you then let go of the first, and then rinse and repeat. Push and let go, push and let go, push and let go, push and let go, and push and let go. Okay? Try to avoid clashing the notes. So for example, I have both notes down or more, 2 notes down or more. It creates this dissonant sound, and sometimes it comes off as unpleasant sounding, though dissonance can be used in other areas. But for now, we're just going to focus on making sure we give as much clarity to the notes as possible. Alright. Now let's then move on to fingering. So what do you expect from similar motion? What fingers do you use when you play similar motion C major scale? Well, let's first start with the first finger, our right hand, thumb on middle C. You have that down. And then you have your second finger down on the next note, which would be D. The next note would be E. You play with your third finger. And then the next note, you would then have to shift the thumb under the third finger to F. And then you just continue playing G, A, B, and then your fifth finger will land on C or pinky. And then it's the same fingering as you come downwards. Fourth, third, second, first, and then you shift the third finger over thumb, and then E, D, and then your first finger or thumb will back to middle C. Now you have first, second, third, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, fourth, third, second, first, third, second, first. That is normally the finger pattern you would use. Well, that is the finger pattern you would use for C major scale. And majority of times it can be applied to other scales. So for example, D major uses the same fingering. E major uses the same fingering. A major uses the same fingering. Okay. There are some scales that doesn't follow that pattern. For example, E flat major would start on the third finger, thumb, second, third, fourth, and then you have to shift your thumb to C, first, second, third. Okay, but we'll come to that in another time. We'll just focus on the normal pattern, which is first, second, third, second, third, fourth, fifth, and then back down. Now, how can we try to memorize that movement? There's 2 ways you can do memorize it. One, I like to think of my thumb starts in C, my first, and my pinky, my fifth, ends on C. So I gotta make sure, okay, I use the correct fingering that can get me from thumb on C to pinky on C, okay? I think of that, and then I remember, okay, first, second, third, and then I need to shift the thumb to F, and then go on my pinky on C. If I was using other fingering, if let's say I was doing first, second, third, fourth, and then I shift, my pinky will land on D. So I would know then, that is incorrect. Probably the better fingering to use would be first, second, third, shift, and pinky on C. Now another way you can do memorize the scale is what I like to do is just remember my key points, my key shifts. I can also do it for my thumb and pinky on C's, but as well, I want to also remember the most important aspects of the scale, which is when do I need to shift? When do I need to turn? That sort of thing. So if, let's say, again, back to C, you got first, second, third, and that's when I need to shift. That's when my thumb needs to shift, so I remember that. Third finger, okay? That's when everything changes and I need to make the shift. Okay? If I extend it to 2 octaves, third finger, I need to remember to shift. Fourth finger, that's when I need to shift again, my thumb to C, and then rinse and repeat. Third, so try again. So I got third shift, fourth shift, third shift, and then my pinky, my fifth finger lands back on C. And it is vice versa when we're going downward in the scale. So you got my thumb, and then my third finger crosses over. Fourth finger needs to cross over. Third finger needs to cross over. And then my thumb is back on C. So I need to remember for my C major scale to properly, efficiently play it with the correct fingering, I need to remember my first, third, and fourth. These are my important fingers I need to remember, because one day would start and finish the scale, my first fingers, fifth finger, and then as well my third and fourth finger is when I need to make the shifts and turns. And that's how you can guys remember fingering for your similar motion scales, major scales. Just remember your key points, your key notes, okay? First, fifth finger, third and fourth, and knowing when to make the shifts and turns. And that's where we can, I want to stop talking about similar motions for now. There's many things I would love to discuss similar motions, but I want to move on to the other scales so that we don't lose time. So, next scale I want to discuss is contra motion. And contra motion goes and sounds like this. So I'm going to start on C, C major. That's my C major contra motion. And it's not too different from similar motion. It actually uses the same fingering, same notes. What the difference is that instead of going in a similar way, it's a clue in the name, similar motion, you're going in a similar way, similar motion, you're going up altogether and down altogether. While contra motion, clue in the name, contrary, different, you're going in different direction, contrary directions. My right hand's going up and then down, my left hand's going down and then up. And it might take some practice to do, might take some a little thinking and processing, since you have to learn to multitask a little bit instead of, you know, managing the task in the same way. Both right hand and left hand, the right hand and left hand are doing different tasks, so a bit more challenging. And I would say don't be afraid of the challenge, okay? I would say just first start off with right hand separately, getting a sense of what my right hand will look like going up and then down, and then left hand, what it looks like going down and then up. I'll start with 1 octave. Let's say if you're a person who is very unfamiliar with contra motions and just want to take it easy for now, just get the gist of it, start with 1 octave. And then once I get comfortable doing my hands separately, then I can come up with hands together. And I'll do the same thing as I did with my similar motion. It's just remember the key points, the key fingering I need to do where I make my shifts or turns. So I got first, second, third, and then oop. If you notice, I need to make the shift, because then my fifth fingers for my right and left hand will land on C. Okay? Again, going back to make sure you use the correct fingering in order to return your fifth or first finger back to C. And then again, you're going up or you're going down, and still remembering those key points when you need to make the shifts or turns. Okay, and you can make the shift here, you can turn here, because then my thumb can land on C. It's pretty much similar to similar motion, just needs a little bit more work just because, again, you are playing it in a different way, and right hand and left hand, because you're doing it differently, it takes a little bit more multitasking. It will be great if you can master the contrary motion scale, because then when you do perform pieces, you have a better idea on how you can multitask both the right hand and left hand, as well as other things you need to keep in mind, such as pedaling and movement and so on. All right, next one is chromatic. Now, chromatic is very different from your similar motion and contrary motion scale. What your chromatic does is that it goes up and down in semitones, goes up in half steps and down in half steps. So it'll sound and play as like this. And I'm going back down. All right. So I'm going one note, one note, one note, one by one, up and down, just like that. And the fingering is not too hard to do, and it's great as well because it can be applied to any note you start off with. When you begin on C, okay, same fingering as you begin on G. Begin on F, same fingering, so on and so forth. But let's start with beginning on C. So you got first, third, and you got first, second. So you got to keep in mind once you reach E and F, okay, you need to change it up a little bit. First, third, first, second, and then back to third, first, second. Same thing on the C, and then once you land on C, second finger, repeat. Okay, same thing with the left hand, a little bit different, but not too different. First, third, and then second first on E and F. Okay, first, third, and then second and first on B and C. Okay, and then back down as usual. Okay, you can do it hands together. Alright, you can practice that hand separately and hands together on that, as well as your contrary motion and similar motion. Alright, the last scale then we'll go over is arpeggios. Now, arpeggios has one thing it has, and is that arpeggios are played in the tonic triad. So for any scale, C major, D major, B minor, E major, oh, I think I said E major, E flat major, F sharp major, okay? You are playing these scales in the tonic triad when you play arpeggio scales. So for example, if I'm starting on C major, okay, arpeggio, I would need to play C, E, G. The tonic triad contains the first, third, fifth note of a scale, and for C major it would be C, E, G. So you got C, and then D, E, my third note, and then fourth, okay, fifth, and it comes to G. That's basically the gist of it. And a way to play arpeggio on the right hand, you start with thumb, second on E, third on G, and then you have to make a little bit of a shift here. Stretch the thumb, elbow slightly tilting towards here, thumb to C. And then when you go back down, when you make the shift, again, you're stretching again, third finger to G, and back down. Now, to keep in mind, when you're doing that stretch, try to avoid lifting the elbow up in the air like this and your thumb dangling. One, it doesn't look that pretty. It's not the pretty sight. Moving your elbow up, down, like that. It's a little bit like a chicken wing. But most importantly, it's not that efficient. It's a little bit difficult playing like that. And it doesn't create that even movement you want, that even beat. Bum, 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 da, da, da. Okay? You just... So what we want to do when we are shifting towards the next octave is just making sure everything is level. Your arms level, your elbows level, your right here is level, hand level. So it can create a seamless movement from the bottom to the top, back to the bottom. And then the left hand, okay? If you want to play C major arpeggio on the left hand, you start with fifth, okay? Third finger on E, second finger on G, thumb on E, and then shift, third finger on E, second finger on G, and thumb, and then back down. And that is C major arpeggio. And that is it for introduction on scale work and finger technique. I hope this helps a lot. There is a lot more we can explore with scale work and finger technique. So if you have any questions or would like another video on this topic, I'll happy to do that. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good day.